Okay, hey folks, Mark Locklear here with a screencast on Chapter 13, Language Skills for Writing Stored Procedures. Let me share my screen. So I think this is a super fun chapter. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the stored procedures portion. You can read through that. I mean, the more important thing, the implementation, stored procedures is almost like the implementation of the code. The writing of procedural code as the book states it. So things like if statements, case statements, loops, that's the more interesting part. If you go on to do great things in databases, if you're writing stored procedures, that's really in the realm of database administrator kind of stuff. So you'll learn more about that then. It's somewhat outside the scope of this class. So I'm just not gonna, again, you can read the chapter and just let me know if you have any questions. Creating the procedures themselves and calling them is relatively straightforward, although it mentions using APIs, third-party tools to call procedures externally. Again, definitely outside the scope of this class, but just know that that's a thing and it's something you could do. And I've been interacting with databases for 15 years as a web developer, and I've never written a stored procedure. I would normally write application code that would maybe call a particular procedure and then have like a cron, what's called a cron task, which is like a Linux. You can imagine if you've got a Linux server, you can create scheduled tasks or scheduled jobs, and you can think about it like a nightly job. I would generally write application code that would call some kind of SQL query, and then I would have a cron task inside Ubuntu is usually the Linux flavor that I use that would sort of call that task and run it on some regular basis. But again, that's on the stored procedure side and setting those things up. On the procedural side, the book goes into detail. I'm not going to rehash these. You can read through them, but all of you should have had Intro to Programming and Logic, CIS 115. So all of this is going to be very similar to that. Again, it's PHP in CIS 115. This is SQL. Concepts are the same, they're right. Things like conditional statements or if statements, things like case or switch statements, loops. Again, the bigger concept is the same. It's just the syntax is going to be different, whether it's PHP or Ruby or Python or C++. For those of you who had my C++ and Java class, a lot of this will look similar to. So that being said, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to write some code. And in this case, I'm going to start with, so this is the assignment number 2 that I have is, let's see, chapter 13. Number 2, I'm asking you to write this, I'm calling it a table of powers, but it takes and raises each number to the power of 1 or to the power of itself, right? So 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 6 is 36, etc. Again, for those of you who've had my C++ and Java class, we actually do this table of powers. So I hope you'll find it interesting to solve. You solve the problem in C++ or Java, but now to be able to do it in SQL requires a little bit of shift in thinking and how MySQL handles variables and those sorts of things. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to write the entire code for you. I think we'll just loop through. We'll create a loop that's going to do this first column, and it's going to write 1 through 10. And so I'll just sort of walk you through what that might look like. As a starting point, I'm going to use, this is exercise 13.3. This is the factorial program. So I started a new document here, new text file, and I'm just going to paste that in, and we'll start making some modifications here. So first thing we'll think about is the variables that we've got, right? We need a variable that's going to store the number. Again, the goal is just to count 1 through 10. So I'm going to take so I'll take this declare statement, let's call it, rather than calling it I, we'll call it number. And then let's make the default 0. Let's say we're going to start it at 0 and then count up, or we could start, we'll modify it and see. We'll either start it at 0 or 1. We'll start at 0 for now and see how it goes. Now, the next thing we'll do is let's look at our loop. And I sort of give you a starting point inside Moodle for that. And we'll do a while loop that's going to say while the number is less than 10, we'll continue the loop. So that'll look something like this. We'll change this to number. Okay. So while number is less than or equal to 10, yeah, while number is less than or equal to 10, we're going to continue to iterate through the loop. Okay. Now we can use this set statement here. That's going to be similar to what we want. Basically, we're going to want to do number plus 1. We're going to want to increment the number by 1 each time, right? So what we can do there is do something like set number equal to number plus 1 instead of minus 1, right? We want to add 1 to it each time. And then let's fiddle around with this concat statement. This is not going to be the final product that we want, but we can sort of modify this to at least give us a sanity check that generally the program is doing what we want. So let's do here, we'll do, we're just going to display number. So in fact, let's change this text to say, we'll just say number is, all right? And then we're going to put this, well, it might be interesting to see what this looks like. Just this way. You're going to need to use your sandbox database because I don't think you have the proper rights to like the AP, or made the example that the EX database might work for you, but use the sandbox. That's the testing. I've got a student account that I always sort of test the stuff out with. And the sandbox database that you have access to is what I used, and that seemed to work. So let me log in. And let me increase this. So let's use, mine's called student. Okay. Now I'm just going to paste this in. Let's see what we get. All right. So notice what I'm getting here. I'm just getting a single message. This is number is 11. And that makes sense, right? I'm starting with 0. And then while number is less than or equal to 10, it's going to increment each time. So the first time I'm starting at 0, but then it actually goes through. So the first time it's 1, 2, 3, and then it actually goes 10 times. So that's why we end up at 11. But that's not really, again, the goal here is to have, I want a single table and sort of have a table view. If you put this in, I mean, another maybe next step could be we could do something like this inside the loop. Let's see what we end up with. Copy that, paste it. So notice what we get here is we get these sort of separate statements each. We're getting the 1 through 10, but it's sort of in separate queries each time, which is not really what we want. So really what we need to do is create a, really what we need to do here is create a temporary table and then store the values as rows in that temporary table. And then we'll call a select statement at the end that will display the values in the table. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to comment this out for now, just so it's still there. And I'm going to create a table here. We'll call it temporary table. We'll call it numbers table. And then it's just going to have a single field. Now, the powers table is going to have 2, right? You're going to want, you can call them whatever you want, but it'll probably be like number and power, maybe. So temporary table, numbers table, and then we need to, inside of our loop, as we iterate each time, we need to insert the new number value, the incremented value. We need to insert that into the this numbers table that we've got, right? So I'm going to say insert into, we're going to do numbers table, and we're just going to simply insert a number each time, right? So really this, our default should be 1, I think, here, because the first iteration through the loop, whatever the default number that's being set as is going to be the number that gets inserted. So like if we read through this, I think we can probably get rid of this now. As we read through this first time through the loop, we're going to insert 1, and then we're going to add 1 to the variable number. Second time it'll be 2, second time it'll be 3, etc. And then the last thing we'll do is, because if we run this now, in fact, let's just sanity check it. We'll run it now to see if, make sure we don't get any errors. Sort of surprised to see that. Yeah, let me go ahead and I may pause the video and figure out what's going on there, but let's add this one more piece of code. Either way, we're going to need to just run a simple select statement at the end. So it'll say we'll select star from numbers table, right? And that should do it. Let me pause though, because we've got an error. There's something that's not quite right. So pause for a second. I'll be back in a jiffy. Okay, I think I was calling this procedure test before it had actually been created, but this should work. What I have here now should work. So again, the important pieces are declaring this number variable. Clean that up a little bit. Creating this temporary table where we're going to actually store the variable values at. Again, we're going to loop through starting at 1 and going through 10. So this is just a simple while loop. Inside the loop, we'll insert the value inside the numbers table each time we go through the loop, and then we'll also increment the variable each time. So if we take and copy, paste this, okay, here's the result. I actually did it earlier and it worked. I think once I create the procedure, there's an error with it, but anyway, the output should look something like this. So give that a try. You may have some issues once you run it the first time. You may not be able to run it the second time, maybe without trying to drop this procedure. But anyway, give it a try and let me know if you have any issues. But this is a good test for just showing you the breadth of MySQL, and again, its ability to really do the same things, use the same kinds of procedures and things that you can use inside of other programming languages. Okay, that's it for now. If you have questions, just let me know.